Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, June 18th, 2026, and today we're talking about what to do with cleared trees. We're going to talk soil ball troubleshooting and planning for retirement as a market gardener. So let's do it. All right, happy Thursday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well this week and rolling into the growing season growingly or resting season restfully for those of you down in the Southern Hemisphere. Things are all good here right now. Well, I guess they're mostly good. We're in a tornado watch right now, so that's maybe not the best, and it's pouring the rain, but otherwise we're fine. My schedule has been a little bit frustrating as I have to go to bed before all the World Cup games have finished, and that's all good. The farm appreciates me having slept. Mostly. You know, though, where I really dropped the ball in this World Cup in this show, highlighting some of the agriculture of some of these nations would have been super cool. Like, be honest, how much do you actually know about Uzbekistan in general, let alone their agriculture? Traditionally, I guess they've been like kind of a grain and cotton and apricot producer. I love me some apricots, but also changes in weather, i.e. less moisture, with rising temperatures has inspired some growers to shift more towards like intensive high tunnel vegetable production throughout the region. And anyway, that just scratches the surface of like what they do there. And if I had been a smart host, I would have done a little ag breakdown for each of our World Cup participants. I mean, I can still do that and I may. So maybe as I find interesting ag tidbits about each of these countries, I can share them here, but also Uzbekistan looks like a pretty chill little place. And I'd like to hear more about the ag going on there. Big shouts to our Uzbekistan friends. Otherwise, for World Cup reasons, I was rushing around hilariously yesterday, but I did manage to film a little in the field session for you for next week while I was out there busting my butt to get some stuff planted so that I could catch the Portugal versus DR Congo match early in the afternoon yesterday. Then after that game, I ran out and I prepped another bed and planted some squash before the England and Croatia match. This is my life right now, pretty much. Anyway, what are you all up to between World Cup games, obviously? Let us know, or better yet, upload a 20-second farm video clip to Dropbox or Drive and share that with Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. Always a highlight to see what you all have going on. All right, so we are going to do our normal Patreon mailbag today that we do on Thursdays and catch up on questions over there. As always, please feel free and encouraged to add your 2 cents in the comments section here as to how you might answer each of these questions, because I definitely do not have a monopoly on all the good ideas or advice. So yeah, chime in with your thoughts. Today's first Patreon question of the day comes to us from Ursula, who writes, quote, "Hi Jesse, I am a couple weeks out from closing on 2 acres of land. This year, my family and I are building a home on it, but next year will be my first full season growing food to sell locally. I'm right on the edge of an urban area and plan to do a U-pick operation with a mix of perennials and annuals. The soil is sandy loam, and I've got between 6 and 10 inches of topsoil across most of that acreage, with a slight slope on the end that runs off into a bit of a gully created by a road culvert. I am in the process of getting a soil test, but I can already guess I would benefit from more organic material. I need to clear a lot of small to mid-sized trees, mostly black oak, and have been considering what to do with the wood. There's a part of me that thinks with a year to let things decompose and grow cover crops, there's nothing better I can do than fell the trees and use them to make hugelkultur beds wherever I can, and especially in perennial beds where the years it would take for them to decompose would be beneficial, even if it ties up nitrogen initially, since I won't expect significant yield from them for 2 to 3 years anyway. Potentially hugelkultur with a nitrogen fixing cover crop in between that I mow and side dress and establish perennials with. I'm initially thinking of using the felled trees on contour where I have slope to help forestall any erosion issues taking down the trees might cause, while the perennials establish raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, and the rest in more regular rows, end quote. All right, thank you, Ursula. Fun stuff here. So the question is essentially, Ursula has some new land, needs to clear some space for the U-pick patch and some annual gardens, but there are a bunch of trees in the way, mostly black oak, it sounds like. What to do with the felled trees and if and how to use them. So first, congrats on the land. Second, let's start here. Black oak has a lot of value that may also or alternatively be worth exploring versus burying it or using it as a berm, so to speak. Black oak, for instance, can make great firewood for one, and the thinner trunk sections and thicker branches can be really great for things like shiitake logs. You said they were small to mid-size, but depending on the size of the logs, black oak can also make good lumber for any infrastructure you might be planning to build, sheds and other outbuildings. Now, the reason I highlight those things is that hugelkultur is not really where my brain goes with this sort of project, because those sorts of beds can be, well, for starters, a little complicated to maintain, just just based on their size and shape. They really have to be well constructed to function properly. Otherwise, you just have large, hard to mow or mulch mounds in the way that get overrun with weeds. I don't hate the idea of allowing some of the logs to help protect from erosion, but there are other ways to protect from erosion, such as a quick cover crop like buckwheat, followed by a more substantial one like sorghum Sudan grass for the summer, or rye vetch over the winter, or even just clover to hold it down until you're ready to start your gardens or you put in your perennials. Since you're not going to be plowing it up, presumably, to plant the perennials, you can use cover crops to hold your soil in place and build organic matter while you build your house. Then maybe sow something more permanent like clover in the fall. You could also use tarp or landscape fabric applied to those areas to protect the soil. Then you would just have a kind of a clean slate to work with when you're ready to plant those annual gardens, but that would expose that area obviously to erosion after you take that tarp off. So you just have to have a good plan for how to manage that. Now, if you have your eyes set on the contours and the hugelkultur beds, I'm not necessarily talking you out of it, just that setting up something that permanent before you really get to know the land can cause other issues down the line. For me, simplicity now is happiness later, because you can always add the complexity. You can always make things more complex once you get to know that land a little better. I'd love to hear updates though as you go. So please send pics and or keep us abreast over there at the Patreon page. Anyway, listeners, viewers, what would you all say? Let us know. And otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we ball, but with soil. BRB.
Today's episode is brought to you by Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything, custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. Their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. All right, back to the show.
A quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's second Patreon question comes to us from Red, who writes, quote, "Hi, Jesse and crew. This year, I tried your soil balls method for potting up my tomato and cucumber starts from soil blocks. I also potted up a few plastic pots for comparison. Sadly, my soil balls are awful. I seem to be having trouble with water stress, and they developed a mineral crust, which may be from the compost used. I had to add extra compost to get my soil balls to stay together, plus green algae. The ones in the plastic pots are doing great, but I'd like to not use plastic. Help? Also, any chance to do an updated starts tunnel/greenhouse video? Do you still underwater by lifting individual trays?" End quote. All right, great questions here, Red. So the soil balls thing, let's start there. I first started doing soil balls when I had a crop of, I believe it was like tomatoes. Maybe it was tomatoes and pepper. I can't really remember if I needed to do both. And I can't really remember why I started, except for I feel like I needed to save soil mix or space, or maybe both, but whatever the reason, I just thought instead of using the large 4-inch soil block maker that uses a lot of soil mix that I, up until that point, had been using forever, why not just form a ball of soil around each of the smaller soil blocks to pot them up? And right away it worked. I could make, the balls whatever size I needed them, and, preserving some of the soil mix if need be. Like if I just needed to get the basil, for instance, through the last cold snaps of the spring, I could make smaller soil balls instead of those large 4-inch blocks, and that would get me through the spring with the basil. Or if I needed bigger blocks like for the tomatoes, I could make really large soil balls so that they could survive an extra couple months in the greenhouse or whatever. But over the years, I have definitely learned some lessons with the soil balling system. For one, the balls can dry out faster than blocks because the bottom of the ball is like relatively exposed, right? Because it kind of slopes down underneath, meaning it's hard to water that part underneath of it. So I've taken to squishing the balls down onto the trays so they are more like large soil bells, I guess, than balls. Also, I pack them in relatively tight so they are not exposed all the way around. That's the big advantage that plastic containers have. They are not exposed on the sides and bottom, so they don't dry out necessarily as quickly. The trade-off there, though, is the root wrapping with the plastic containers. If the plant is just wrapping its roots in circles around the container looking, to find more soil, it's not only binding itself up, but wasting a lot of energy. Bottom watering does help with the soil balls to help prevent crusting. And to your question about that, I only lift them up to make sure they are not in standing water. With bottom watering, it's easy to drown them. So you just have to, make sure the tray to lift it up occasionally to make sure it's moist, but not like sitting in a swamp. Overhead watering is always going to wear down soil blocks or balls over time and cause a little mineral crusting and or algae after a while. If you do go overhead, and I do for most of my crops, at least until they're big with the tomatoes and peppers, you just have to go pretty gently. As for my greenhouse, it's still incredibly simple. Tables in a covered space with a fan, nothing super fancy there. The barrels that I have those tables kind of built on don't even have water in them anymore. They are literally just tables now. I do have the heating cables for the early spring and late winter nights. I have a heat mat for germinating seeds during that time as well. And could I improve upon this design? Sure. But it's cheap, it's easy, and it's a system that has served me pretty well for like 17 years now. Now, I will say what seems super simple to me after that much experience may not actually be that simple. I'm sure there are nuances to my system that I don't even realize I do. So I don't want to be flippant about like my greenhouse design, but a simple farmer's friend cat tunnel, some removable end walls, a simple box fan, some heating cable, and some card tables can get you pretty far with a greenhouse. A couple weeks ago, because we were gone to a soccer tournament for 2 whole days at a time, I had the trays on a level card table and bottom watered them well before I left in the morning. It was not super sunny, but it was very warm that week. And 12 hours later or 15 hours later, the plants were still good off of that one kind of deep watering. So yeah, bottom watering for the win there. I hope there was something helpful in there. If the soil balls aren't working for you, you can also try the 4-inch block maker or the large standing block maker that I think it makes like 6 blocks that could be used for potting up from like the mini blocks. The soil balls or bells work well if you pack them in slightly tighter and kind of push them down and then and or bottom water them. Make sure to spread the trays around also regularly, that, if you're watering them overhead so that you're getting the backside of them. Yeah. And again, try that bell shape. See if that works any better. Anyway, yes, let us know your all's experience on the soil balling, friends. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we shall retire to the retirement segment of this episode. Be right back. Back seems like a fitting word for this retirement segment. My poor dog hates this weather. Yeah, here, I put these on these level tables. Also, I should say, sometimes when I run out of the bottom watering trays, I just use these little like pizza totes that I got a long time ago for doing microgreens. But don't use them for that, but they make great little bottom waterers. But anyway, yeah, little table. Yep, no end wall, fan, simple.
Hey guys, this is my backyard garden, New York Zone 7B. Here are some of the vegetables that are growing in my backyard right now. And here's my harvest of the day. I made salad with garlic scape dressing. My cat loves leafy greens as well.
All right, our third and final Patreon question of the day comes to us from JD, who writes, quote, "Hi, Jesse. I'm wondering about how are the best ways for a market gardener to plan for retirement, especially if running a market garden is their only job," end quote. So great stuff, and an important question here. I did a segment on this before, and then another one later that same week on Farming Like You're Old, which I will link both of those in the show notes. But I think it's definitely a topic that could be addressed every few months because retirement is a big one. First, though, retirement doesn't mean quitting, especially not when it comes to farming. Retirement, to me, means not having to work, not having to grind out a living every week. In my mind, retirement looks like gardening, tinkering, hanging out with family, writing more, reading more, traveling to see the family more, being more involved locally within my community, but mostly just sitting under my own proverbial, but also literal vine and fig tree and just enjoying the proverbial, but again, also literal fruits of my labor. So for emphasis, retirement isn't stopping. Retirement is doing what you want to do, which may include farming, but doesn't and frankly shouldn't rely on it in case you get sick, hurt, tired, markets change, etc. However, I can't live that later life dream without some pretty substantial savings now, savings that cannot be accrued in just a few years' time, so they require some serious planning. For instance, as I've discussed before, just owning a farm here is like $10,000 or more a year with things like insurance, taxes, and other expenses like mowing, water, electric if you have it in an outbuilding, and so on. So you have to be able to cover that for like 30 years or so somehow, while also, of course, covering the rest of your budget. Food and all the other things. It takes a couple decades or more to really get that amount of savings it would take to stop selling so much food, to stop creating content full time, in my case, hence a retirement plan. Now, I'm not going to be able to add too much to what I already did in those previous segments, and I recommend you go listen to and or watch those, but a couple key points. whatever today is for you, today is the day you start your retirement plan if you have not already. Ideally, you sit down with a financial advisor, but it's okay to just sit down with like your partner and outline what you envision for your retirement. A financial advisor would also ask you to do that anyway. But be serious about this part. Be conservative with what you will be capable of physically, but be liberal with what you will need financially. What age will that be that you want to sort of slow down? What will your bills look like on a monthly/yearly basis? Are you tracking your budget now? You definitely should be. That will help you to know what it will look like in 15 or 20 years or whatever, whenever you want to retire. Keep in mind also, if you retire at say 65, you won't live just another 5 years, more than likely. You got to save for at least another 25 to 30 years of living, at least. The baseline rule of thumb is to have 25 times your current annual expenses saved, which is probably a lot of money if you just did the math there, but is also not likely to be enough. Though if you get Social Security, checks, that may help, assuming Social Security still exists in the future, which is not a guarantee, though it is more likely that Social Security checks will simply be lower starting in about a decade than they are now. But at least we have a trillionaire on the planet. That's great news. Anyway, being relatively liberal with the budget for us, the rule of 25 leaves us needing around like $2 million for a modest, reliable full retirement for both of us. But that's a lot of money. So that amount of money needs a dynamic approach to achieve. IRAs, high yield savings accounts, some small investments, etc. Again, what I'm talking about here is a starting point. If you're serious about this, and you should be meeting with a financial advisor. You may find that your current income is not going to support a very substantial retirement plan, or maybe it does, but your current lifestyle does not. You're spending a little bit too much going to some soccer games. Heard that. Knowing what you may need may change how you run or look at your current farm business. It may not be profitable enough. How are you going to change that? Because if you're grinding now, not growing in profit, and not making enough to retire or put some retirement away, when you hit retirement age, there won't be a whole lot that's, different, except that maybe, hopefully, you've paid off your mortgage by then or something, and your bills have gone down. In those other segments I referenced, I discuss a few more technical options, but I cannot stress enough how important it is to consider retirement early on in your life, like long before you retire. Again, not as quitting, but as slowing down and not having to grind. A couple other things I don't believe I discussed, though, is investments that you can make in the land, such as fruit trees, berry bushes, perennials, plus well-maintained infrastructure, etc. Not because you want to sell the farm later, which is actually how a lot of farmers even pay for their retirement, for better or worse, but to enjoy and potentially profit with less work when you're older. Anyway, I think the topic often garners a lot of good conversation, so feel free to add said conversation in the comment section. Otherwise, I think that's it for this Therapy Thursday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and/or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. This is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, and if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Hanging by a thread. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you sign up in the month of June, you do get a shout on the show, but no new signups yesterday, which is going to leave our poor hero Lonnie in a bit of a bind, headed down there to the Everglades. But that's the way it goes sometimes, especially in the Everglades. Just a wild place down there. Anyway, love to all of our supporters and all of those who can't afford to support us in the moment. We get it. We will keep providing you with free growing information for absolutely as long as we can afford it ourselves. So anyway, thank you for watching and or listening. We'll see you tomorrow for Feedback Friday. Bye. Honey, I got you. And you were right on time.
New England summers don't exactly ease you in. 1 minute the windows are open, the next your apartment feels unbearable. Well, meet Windmill Air. Windmill window ACs are sleek, they're quiet, and cool your space fast without the bulky eyesore. Rated the #1 easiest AC to install, Windmill lets you adjust temperatures right from your phone and, unlike traditional units, cools your room more evenly like central air. Shop Windmill online at windmillair.com or pick up an AC at your nearest Target or Home Depot. Windmill, modern air care your room deserves.